I like being able to create something. I love seeing people come into the business not really having a ton of experience and seeing them really develop into leading other people.
How do you feel about women in this industry?
Every single year, 95%. So many of the top leaders are women. So I was thinking the other day, like, you've always been like a big sister. This last experience in December, I would say was probably one of the most emotional for me.
So I'm really excited. I get to spend the next 45 minutes talking to Senior National Consultant Rebby Sutherland, somebody who I love and respect very much.
I love you too.
Okay. So you ready?
Yes.
Okay. You have not seen these questions? You have?
I have on the walk up.
Okay. So a lot of time to prepare.
I feel like I
can answer them.
Understand them.
It's all about you.
Life experiences. Yeah.
I mean, I want to start with tell us about your journey. Tell us about your journey. What inspired you to start on the path you're on today?
Yeah. So I grew up, my dad is an orthopedic surgeon. My mom is a nurse, so pretty medically oriented family. I went to Emory University in Atlanta to become a doctor. But after a little while studying and taking like organic chemistry and, those medical classes.
I did not know that.
Pre-med classes. I thought, I thought I'm not very good at this and I don't really like it. So I'm just going to try to do something else. So I interviewed lots of different places. And I, to be honest, felt really intimidated by a lot of the places that I interviewed because I didn't have a lot of work experience. I worked in my dad's doctor's office, like filing papers, and then I taught tennis. I played tennis in college, so and teaching tennis was like for 4-year-olds, so it was kind of like babysitting, no like real skill or anything like that. And so I didn't have a lot of experience. I kind of like moved my majors around a bunch of times in college. So I just needed some good experience. But turns out, thankfully, I was offered the position. Turns out I was very, very bad at the field when I first started. Very bad. And I think I was kind of the person, like people who get really, really up also get really, really down. So if I closed sales early in the day, I would close a lot of sales. But then if I didn't, it would be like the end of the world. And so I had to learn how to manage my emotions. Then after I figured out the sales, I had to learn how to really like lead people in a way that they wanted to be led rather than how I wanted to do things, which was a challenge. I feel like that was probably a bigger challenge for me than even learning the sales, because the sales seemed like pretty black and white. It was like if I saw this number of people, but learning leadership and kind of how to coach people was a whole different ballgame. But I ultimately opened up in St. Louis, Missouri. I got promoted to organizational consultant 5 years after that. And I thought, this city is way too small for me. I actually remember having a conversation with you. You came to visit, and I was like, there's no, all the consultants are in like really big cities. Like, I obviously have to move to a big city. And so, anyway, I just decided to move to New York City, of all cities in the United States. From St. Louis, Missouri, with people from St. Louis that were doing residential sales. And the toughest no that we ever got at that time was like, oh, you know what? No, that's okay, honey, but you have a good day. And then we went to New York City and we're doing business to business sales. So if you could imagine what business owners in New York City did or do when someone, might interrupt their time, it was a tough transition. You also came to visit me then, and I remember sitting in the stairwell with you and being like, what am I doing? And just, I had to figure it out. And it took us about a year. Everyone quit that moved with us to New York. I couldn't even do a sale on the program. And it was just me. I think the rent for the office space was $20,000 a month. The rent for where I lived was $5,000 a month. And it also took me 3 hours to get to the office in the morning, remember? Anyway, so then, it took us about a year and did really well there. I was there for like a total of 7 years. and then moved back to St. Louis, Missouri. So that's a whole nother story about why I moved back to St. Louis. But I love St. Louis now. My husband and my son my husband's from St. Louis, so that's why we live there.
I can't believe it was 7 years.
That I was there total.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing the first 6 of them. It was amazing. I love New York. I've been back only a couple of times. It's so different. It's like such a different life. I used to wake up and be able to see all parts of the water. Like I lived eventually lived in the penthouse across
Yep.
the street from my office. So I would wake up and I remember thinking literally every day, like, I can't believe I live here. Like I could see, all the Manhattan is obviously a island. And so I could see the water in every direction. I could see the plains land. I loved living there. And just, it was a cool life. It really like was exactly what I kind of imagined it would be just after that first year of very challenging, kind of really questioning my own self-worth and being, but I thankfully didn't give up and figured it out.
So, why entrepreneurship?
Well, I think I have always really liked to be in control. My parents kind of joke about that regularly. I like the ability to create something and leading.
Was there a moment in time where, I mean, it was your first job out of college,
I was
right?
still in college when I started.
Yeah. So, fast forward, I mean, you have
Mhm.
this incredible business, all these people that you lead and help. And was there a moment in time where you said, oh, I'm in?
I no, people ask me that a lot. There really wasn't. Like I think when I was new, I mean, I wish there was, but to be honest, there wasn't. I'm very much. I feel like I'm a creature of habit. Like once I get like consistently doing something, I stick with it. For example, I consistently have been working out every day of 2025. And so I just, it was like kind of one foot in front of the other. I wasn't very good at first, but then, I just kept showing up and kept trying to learn and kept trying to get better. And then eventually I kind of looked around and I was like, whoa, I have a team of people here. And I feel like it's been that way kind of across the board in all of the situations I've been in St. Louis right now after COVID. We had 2 people in the office. My son was just born. We essentially were building from scratch again and from that situation. And I just remember, one foot in front of the other, show up, do the right thing, take care of people. And, eventually you like kind of look around and you're like, whoa, like, we're doing great and we're helping a lot of people and we're making a lot of progress here, but there wasn't like a day that I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do forever. It's just that I feel like I showed up to do like the work every day and then kind of like looked and was like, wow, we've made a lot of progress. And when you make progress, obviously you like feel good about the progress, and then you realize, wow, I'm pretty good at this. I can keep doing it. So I think that's like where the commitment came from.
You're very competitive.
Yes. One of my guys asked me the other day, like, well, you tell us to talk about our why, and he was like, well, so what was your why? And I was like, I just want to win. And he was like, win at what? And I was like, everything. And I don't obviously win all the time, but then I learned from not winning what we could do differently. And sometimes those are the best experiences because that's what helps us figure out how we can get better. Like there's so many things that are so different from when I first opened up, and there's so many differences now. Like Zoom didn't exist, right? Like these things probably didn't exist. Like iPhones didn't exist. I remember a bonus to give someone in my office an iPhone prior to it even being released to the stores. And that I remember like that month of production was like, I mean, it was crazy what people were doing to earn that iPhone. But that didn't even exist back in 2006 when I opened up. We've had to adjust, we've had to learn, and obviously, not won, certain times, but that's helped us like evolve and change to get better results.
How do you think you've changed personally and professionally over time? Like, how do you feel?
I would be interested to hear your answer to that about me, but yeah, I mean, I've changed a lot. I have changed a lot. Personally, I've probably become less hard on myself. Like a lot of times, the more critical we are of ourselves, unfortunately, then as a result, even if we aren't critical of like we don't feel like we're critical of other people feel judged by us because we're criticizing ourselves. So I remember one time I ran a morning meeting and I thought at the time it was so bad. And the girl came up to me after the meeting and said, "That was such a good meeting." And I was like, "Oh, that was awful. I messed up the ending or whatever." And then that girl ended up being what was called our leader of the week that week. And that leader of the week got to run the morning meeting on Fridays. Anyway, she ran the morning meeting and it was amazing. It was so good. You could tell she put so much effort into it and planned and prepared so much. And so after it, I said, "You did such a great job. That was awesome." We had met before to kind of practice it. And she did a great job. And she said she thought I was like lying. She was like,
Mm.
"No, you don't think that was, I know you don't think that was good. That was awful. I totally messed it up." But I realized the reason why she felt like I wasn't genuinely like complimenting her on it was because I had criticized myself, a couple days earlier
Mm.
on something that, she thought was great. So I've learned to not be as hard on myself about things and recognize that like the harder I judge myself, maybe subconsciously, the harder I judge
Mm.
others. So, um, from a leadership perspective, that ends up helping people, want to work with you more.
What challenges? Like, what are the big you said something earlier, this is how we learn. We don't necessarily always learn through the good, right? It's like the things that happen that teach us. Any big moments?
Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of those transitions were big moments of learning. I think like in terms of challenges, like how can we become like the best leader for other people, and then as a result, I think the rest kind of works out. So challenges are, helping other people learn that about themselves as well. But it all comes down to like how are we communicating? Are we making people feel good about themselves? Are we communicating in a way that kind of, gets to the figuring out what the problem is and then, coming up with solutions. But I mean, there's been a lot of challenges, but overall that those are the main.
Who do you think has influenced you the most?
Well, Gary, obviously. So I was really lucky. Gary Polson and I had a conference call. It just was very random. Ed actually reached out to him to like teach the leaders in his office how to have a one-on-one. And so I was very fortunate that he picked me to be like do the role play of the one-on-one and how to like coach someone. It was what the point of the one-on-one was. And back then, remember, we didn't have Zoom.
Right.
So it was, we didn't even have, the cell phones. I guess we had cell phones at the time, but they were like those Nokia things that didn't have
No
much
FaceTime. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't very loud. So it was on the office phone, and we were all like crowded around the office phone on speakerphone. And then Gary and I started talking, and he, just from the conversation said, "Hey, let's follow up next week." I was really fortunate to work with him, and he's really taught me a lot about some of the things I was talking about earlier in terms of becoming a great leader and coach. I do think like when I think back to my time when I was in the field, what would Ed have done, and I do think he was a great leader in that way. And you've helped me a lot in terms. I was thinking the other day like you've always been like a big sister, but also like a badass big sister.
When you think about like I look at what you've accomplished, it's really interesting when you know somebody really well and you've been around them for a really long time. It's like
In a lot of different scenarios.
in a lot of different scenarios. So sometimes I take a step back, right? And I think about look at what you've accomplished and look at what you've done and what an incredible life that you've built for yourself. What's next?
Yeah.
How do you think about that? Like, what goals do you have, or how do you see the next, I don't know how you think, 5, 10, 15 years? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
How do you think about it?
Yeah, so from a business perspective, a big goal of mine has always been to help 100 people be in business for themselves, and then after I hit that goal, like 100 people, 100 consultants in the organization. So we have one consultant in the organization now. So it's a pretty big goal, but we're working towards that 100 people, in business for themselves. We've had a lot of growth over the last couple of years with some like really good leadership, not only just running their own office, but teaching others how to do it. So we're growing there. I've got a 5-year-old, so and my husband, we totally redid the outside area of our house. So we're really looking forward to the summer out here in California. It's always nice, but in St. Louis, Missouri, gets to be like negative 15 degrees sometimes. So in terms of like this year, we can't wait we love entertaining. We love having people over. He sent me a picture this morning of like literally 7 different groups of people working on stuff outside. And that just gets me excited to, have people over and spend time together. And so we're really creating a really great place there. I'm like, I love what we have created in St. Louis. And, my son's getting into baseball and stuff. So we'll see how that goes. Try to get him into tennis, but
Maybe later.
maybe later. But, I just love him and, loving spending time with him and seeing him grow up.
I love it. It's not on here. It's not on my list of questions. How do you feel about, I always find this question odd, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Women in this industry,
Yeah.
business. Do you have?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that question. I think that we read that Lean In book by Sheryl Sandberg
Yep.
a while ago, and I feel like she probably sums it up better than I could ever attempt to. But there's a lot of like perceptions that people have, women have about being in business and kind of not being able to do both or do it all. Unfortunately, I think they have those perceptions. And so I don't know, as time has changed, I started 20 years ago, so, that's changed a little bit. There's a lot more working women. In fact, most of my friends in St. Louis all work and all have children and all have families. There's I have friends that are doctors and, both parents work and they've got kids and people in the financial industry and all that stuff. And so it's just it's interesting. I'm glad that it's evolved, but I do feel like there's like some progress that still can be made so that there are more women in those settings. I think it just comes down to like a belief thing, or, I don't 100% know. Like I said, that book Lean In really helped my mentality about it. But it really just comes from a belief thing. A lot of times men just kind of look at it like, yeah, duh, I'm going to be the best at this. Whereas sometimes women tend to question themselves a little bit more. And so just, I hope that the progress of more women in business, really succeeding and more female consultants has helped them understand that it's possible to do both.
Before I get to the fun questions, there are 2 things I want to touch on. We may go a little over, but that's okay. We have time. First thing is, I have had the very special experience to go to Liberty, me, you, and Vanessa. It takes a big heart to do that. I think you have an incredibly big heart. Do you want to talk about?
I actually, since we were there in December, anytime I have talked about Liberty since then, I've gotten emotional because we had a pretty pretty impactful experience this last time. So we've been going to Liberty for 10
10 years.
now. It was very random how it started, but we just, fell in love with the kids. And obviously a lot of the kids have, either grown out of the home or moved on to other situations. So clearly it wasn't like the individual kids. It was really the culture of, helping these children in an environment where they were helpless and needed someone and people to step in to help them. And oftentimes when we would go there, they would be, they would be there and we would meet anyone new that had been brought to the home since we were last there. But this last experience in December, I would say was probably one of the most emotional for me because of two children on the same night being brought to Liberty while we were there, both from very different, both heartbreaking scenarios that, it just made me feel like we have to do more, and it just, it's sad to think that there are, that happens. And that's all I have to say about that.
I do want everybody to know that the reason that we went to Liberty was because of you.
It was because of me, because I originally said, hey, let's go on a fun trip. And then I was really actually trying to work on myself and my own awareness of my own feelings. And a good friend of mine and yours told me, suggested that I go spend time around kids. Because as I have learned with my 5-year-old, they don't hold much back when they, about what they're feeling. If they're mad, they let you know. If they're sad, they let you know. If they, want to give you a hug and love you and cuddle up, they will also let you know. And they don't change it based on like what they think is right.
Yeah.
4 or 5-year-olds especially. And probably, right around that age. But so when my friend suggested that, I looked into doing that in New York City at the time, and without a lot of licenses or schooling education specifically centered on why I would want to spend time with these children. It was kind of hard. So you then suggested, let's go to an orphanage. So I thought, okay. And I only speak English. Although you and Vanessa both speak other languages, we were limited in where we could go because of my language abilities. So we went to Belize, and that's where it started. And it was a very funny, the first trip was lots of stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Wild. I have some fun questions. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
What's your all-time favorite book, movie, song?
Each of those, I
Pick one.
Of all of the questions that you sent me and I read on my walk up here, that like of all of them, I was like, okay. And then I saw that one, I was like, I have so many. Like pick
one.
Book. Okay, just because we've already, I really love Before You Quit Your Job. It's by Robert Kiyosaki he wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was like one of the first books I read about business that like helped me understand business. So I don't know if that's my favorite, but I love that book.
Okay.
Movie. Oh, geez. I don't know what my favorite movie is. I don't know.
Okay.
I watch a lot of movies.
Song
Is what do I walk up to now? Oh, so Quinn and I, this goes back to a movie, so this might help. What's it called? The Greatest Showman.
Yep.
Quinn and I, my son and I love dancing to it. He calls it our song. That one song that is, he sings at the end.
Yep.
Come Back Home. So I love every song in The Greatest Showman. I don't know if they're my favorite, but I love them and I love dancing with my son to them.
I'll take it. If you could travel to any time or era.
Oh, that's a great question. I did not see that one, but I love it.
Where and when would you go?
Yeah, so I am so interested about like the whole, I don't know. I grew up in a house that was built in 1806, and then there's a guest house across the driveway that was built in 1790.
Oh, wow.
And so obviously as I was growing up there, it's very much redone. But there's like still the building of where the outhouse was in the outside. There's still the building of where they would hang the meat, for that. That's how they, ate. And the fireplace, you can walk into it. It's as, it's super big and tall, and that's where they used to cook their food. So I feel like that era of time, like the 1800s, I don't know that I would like to live during it. During that time, because of all of the like life, is so different now. Um, but I'm so interested by like the early 1900s, late 1800s, based on like how people survived. Like it's just, and really it's so interesting to think about the challenges that they had, and they just figured it out, and so any era, you were about to say, I thought you were going to say if you could travel to any place. I
Yeah.
just went to Japan last week and I thought that was a very interesting place.
You would recommend it?
I would recommend it very much. Very much. It's a very interesting place. I could tell stories about it.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. And then if you could have any superpower for a day, what would it be?
That's a great question. I would love to know what people are thinking without them having to tell me. But I always say I can't read your mind. But if I could have one superpower for a day, it would be to read people's minds, because that would be,
What would you do with it?
I would just like then be able to help. So often people don't share what they're actually thinking because they don't know if it's right or wrong. But then I feel like I would be able to just help people better rather than them like holding back on, whatever they're thinking. Or I would be able to probably do more too.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to conclude there.
Okay.
I want to say thank you.
I know what you're thinking right now.
I want to say thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I appreciate the time. I appreciate you sitting down. I think it's important that people get to know. I think we have incredible people. I think you're an incredible person, leader, mother, spouse, friend. And I think it's important that people get to know you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks for inviting me.
Okay.